Well, Robin and dear friends, thank you so much for that introduction. You've got a fine array of far more important and inspirational speakers than me this afternoon, so I'm going to be very brief. But I wanted to just concentrate on the fact that we are now a charity. Now, many of you will know why that's important, but for those who don't, it really is an important status that as a charity, we have a particular status in law, but also in terms of, I hope, still, notwithstanding some of the difficulties we've seen with some charities in recent times, public affection and trust. And it's all about trust. And of course, there are fiscal advantages, and that's why, as trustees, we are under a particular duty. The Charity Commission issues a lot of guidance about what we should do. Every single one of us has to sign a declaration that we are not disentitled to be a charity trustee, which means we can't have been bankrupt or a whole raft of other issues there, which would otherwise not mean that we were not able to be a trustee. And of course, the most important thing from the fundraising point of view is that for every pound we get given by way of a donation, the dear old government gives us 25 pence on top. So we actually get that added status because we get that extra income by virtue of being a charity. And so you will know gift aid, so long as somebody is paying tax themselves, then it's fiscally advantageous to them, because it comes off their total earnings, so that they're taxed on less money, but also for us, as I say, we get the benefit of that 25% uplift. So I'm not going to tell you a long story, but it seems a long time ago, and actually I suppose it is, that I remember our first tentative meeting with the Charity Commission on the 19th of October 2016. Robin was there, a number of people here were there, and it was really exploring what was needed to actually make sure that we could come within the definition of a charity. Now, those of you who are expert in charity law will know that only recently have we actually regulated charities in terms of setting out a definition of a charity and what the requirements are to become a charity. Up until that time, you could just form yourself into what was called a charity, and you could operate like that, and you stayed a charity until such time as somebody challenged you in the courts and said, we don't think you're a charity at all, and then it became an individual decision of the courts as to whether you actually had charitable status or not. And it all went back to the preamble of a statute in 1603 in the time of Elizabeth I, which was all designed about what were charitable objectives: education, religion, bridges, obviously important in those days, and a raft of other things which are in the preamble. The statute's long since been discarded and overturned, but the preamble still remained the basis of charitable law. In the 19th century, Lord Macnaghten drew up a series of rules as to what really should be the objects that charities needed to pursue. But it's only within the last few years that we've actually turned the common law definition of charity into a statutory law. We've had the Charities Acts of 2006, 2011 and 2016, which only goes to show that once you get Parliament getting its fingers into some aspect, then it can't leave it alone. It keeps on wanting to legislate. And so what is now required is, in order to become a charity, you have to register with the Charity Commission. And that means you have to prove to them that your objects are within the statutory definition of a charity, and that includes being able to show that you are of public benefit. Well, anyway, it was a long process. It's taken us best part of 2 to 3 years in order to do that. We've cavilled and quibbled over individual words and things like that. We've had to change our objectives to meet the Charity Commission. They've required all sorts of documentation for us and such like. But I'm going to end by just reading to you what those objects are, once they've now been distilled to the satisfaction of the Charity Commission. And they are, of course, the same objects that we have as a company limited by guarantee as well. So they're in company law as well. But these are objects which I hope you'll feel really do encapsulate what motivates us, what gets into our hearts, what, as Robin was saying earlier, really brings us together, but also has that individual impetus that gets us up in the morning and says, now is the time to do something to try to make the world and my community a better place. And there are basically two aspects. One is conflict resolution, and the other is the promotion of racial and religious harmony. Conflict resolution, and it reads as this: the promotion of national and international conflict resolution and reconciliation for the public benefit with a view to relieving suffering, poverty and distress, and building and maintaining social cohesion and trust within and between communities by identifying the cultural, religious and other causes of conflict in different parts of the world and producing reports on the findings, bringing together leaders and others of influence within communities in conflict in order to aid mutual understanding, faster dialogue and mutual respect, and assist in finding common ground for agreement and cooperation, producing reports on the results of conflict resolution-related activities, including impartial recommendations for action, and finally, the advancement of the education of the public for the better understanding of human rights, participation in government, good citizenship, models of good governance, and neighbourliness in the interests of general public benefit. And secondly, the promotion of racial and religious harmony. And it reads as this: the promotion of racial and religious harmony and peaceful coexistence between people of different religions, cultures, races, and nations for the benefit of the public by, first, educating the public in the different backgrounds, religious and other beliefs held by different religious, racial, cultural, and national groups to promote mutual respect and provide a basis for dialogue. Secondly, running events and projects to bring together representatives of different faiths and separate groups within these faiths to facilitate interfaith dialogue, including examining together the interpretations of their faiths and common themes. And finally, running projects that bring together individuals of different backgrounds and beliefs to work together for a common good. So what you have there is an encapsulation of both the objects, the values of what we're trying to achieve, but also the practical method, the practical routes down which we wish to go in order to achieve that. And I hope you feel that it does, in an omnibus way, bring together many threads that we actually feel here today about how we can, as I said right at the very beginning, make not just our world, but our community and our families far, far better places than they are at the moment. So thank you all very much indeed.